Now that we've got that stuff out of the way, let's go ahead and create our basic game scene. So in this video, we are going to be putting together our lights, we are going to be putting together our skyboxes, and, well, that's about it. So let's go ahead and get started. It should be fun.
At least it'll be something I kind of understand.
Yeah, it's going to be very straightforward, but it's still important. So let's start off with creating our directional light. So I'm going to go ahead and do game object, create other directional light. Now I will be playing around with this a little bit more near the end of the video, but I want to get some basic light in. I'm going to leave it as its default, but I will bring its intensity down to maybe 0.3. And we'll see how that affects our ship model later in this video once we get our skybox imported.
And the great thing is you can always just change it. So
yeah, of course. So the next thing I'm going to do is we're going to go ahead and create a skybox. Now, what is a skybox? A skybox is a collection of a bunch of textures that are applied to our camera in such a way that it kind of makes it look like we're in an environment, when in reality we just have a bunch of textures.
It's kind of like painting the inside of your room to look like the outside.
Right. Yeah, pretty much. There are two ways to go about creating a light box, or at least as far as applying one. We can apply one to our camera, which is what we're going to be doing, or we can go to edit, I believe it's under render settings. We can set one up right here, our skybox material.
Now, why are we going to do it to the camera versus that?
Well, that's so that we can have potentially different skyboxes for different scenes in our level, or in our game.
Perfect.
If we applied it to our render settings, it would be set everywhere. That being said, the one difference I find annoying is that if you apply it to your render settings, you'll be able to see it in your scene view if you check this little toggle skybox button.
But you can't if it's attached to the camera?
No, you can't.
Oh.
Whatever.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's pretty much my feelings on the subject. So let's go ahead and create one. It's actually very straightforward to do. We just have to go to Create, Folder. I'm going to go call this Materials, because we simply have to create a material, which I'm going to say Create Material, and I'm going to call this Skybox 1. Actually, I will place this within a subfolder of materials called Skyboxes, just so we can organize our different skybox materials. Now, the way that we create a skybox material is we just have to change the shader to, not surprisingly, render FX skybox.
Yeah, that makes an obvious kind of sense.
So now we can go ahead and apply our textures, but where do we get our textures from? Well, this isn't really an asset creation video, so we're not going to go through the actual process of putting one together painstakingly in Photoshop. Instead, we're going to be using an awesome little free open source tool called Spacescape, which you can go ahead and download off SourceForge, sourceforge.net, project Spacescape. You can grab it, has an MIT license, which is very permissive. It allows you to use it in commercial and non-commercial capacities. So go ahead and grab it, download it, and I fortunately already have it downloaded, so I'll move this off the screen and pull open the folder I have it downloaded to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and open up Spacescape, and we get this. Now, you can do a whole lot of fun stuff with this. You can create new layers. We see if we just hit new layer, we get a bunch of stars, and we can configure each one of the layers and do lots of fun stuff, like billboards or noise, and that's kind of cool.
This guy really put together a pretty slick little program.
Yeah, it's really nice. But what also is nice about it is that since I'm not a designer, it comes with a lot of really helpful examples. One of which I'm going to be using for this
Always
video.
helpful.
Exactly. I'm not going to sit here and twiddle with all these options, although you are free to do so, because it probably would be lots of fun if we had the time. So I'm going to say File, Open, and I'm going to select, it automatically opens up to a save folder that comes with the project if you download it. And I'm going to select Purple Nebula Complex.xml, hit Open, and look at that.
Pretty.
So yep, all we had to do was just take this pre-made thing and we have a skybox. So that's really cool. Now all we need to do is save it out, or rather export it in a way that we can import into Unity. So I'm going to hit File, Export Skybox, and I'm just going to call this skybox. How about 2? Because I already created a skybox earlier. Actually, I'm going to do this one more time. I forgot something important. I'm not going to have the image size be 512. I'm going to go to 2048. You'll want to play around with these settings to get the best balance between performance and quality. But for this particular example of this particular game, it's not going to be very resource intensive to draw, so I'm going to go with 2048. And then I guess let's go ahead and just do Skybox 3 then.
I thought Unity resed everything down to 1024.
It depends on the application. And the platform and other stuff. So now that we have that, I'm going to minimize this, and I'm going to open up the app when release folder, which is the default release folder for, or the default thing that it dumps our exports into. I'm going to zoom out so we can grab our Skybox 3s. So we need our back, bottom, front, left, right, and top. And those 6 different textures will constitute our skybox.
And it does it for you on here because obviously he knew what he was doing when he set it up. But I have seen a lot of people set these up and they just number them. And then when they go to put it together, they don't remember what number went where. So make sure back, bottom, front, left, right is in your naming conventions.
Yeah, you'll definitely want to not get confused with that. But yeah, so now I have these 6 textures and they're named appropriately. I'm going to go back into Unity. I'm going to create a new asset folder called textures. And then I'm going to create another folder called skyboxes. And I'm just going to drag and drop this into here. So let's wait for it. Now these are rather big skyboxes. You probably would want to do 1024, but still.
It's all right.
So what I'm going to do on our import settings is I'm going to set the max size to 2048, and then I'm going to set the wrap mode to clamp. You have to do that for skybox textures, otherwise you get some strange artifacts when it tries to render them. Now that I've done that, always make sure to hit apply whenever you change the import settings of a asset. So now it's re-importing those for us.
The little time I've spent with Unity, apply gets me every time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really annoying, especially when you're like switching between play mode and not play mode, and you forget to hit apply, and then you wonder why nothing's changing. And yeah. So now if we click on our skybox material, we can go ahead and apply these textures. A really easy way to do that is just to drag and drop. So we'll see the first one it wants is front, the front texture, which hey is called front. Drag and drop. Next one, back, which is the back texture. Drag and drop. Now left and right. This program has a discrepancy with Unity. Unfortunately, it's confused between what's left and what's right, or just not.
I was going to ask about that.
Yeah, so what we actually have to do is apply the right to the left, and then the left to the right. But once you know that, you'll avoid the artifacts.
And if you got them somewhere else and they're backwards, it's as simple as taking a look at your skybox, and if things don't gel, just go in and reverse them.
Yep. So there's a bunch of different coordinate systems that are used by different programs, so yeah. Next up is up and down. The way that this one does it is top and bottom. So top is up and bottom is down. Okay, so we now have our skybox material.
And a sweet looking one it is.
Yep. So how do we go ahead and apply it? Well, that's really easy. If I click on my camera, remember we're applying these to the cameras, I can just click and drag Skybox 1 right onto our... Oh, right. It's actually one more step involved. Whoops. The step that we need is we need to actually add the Skybox component. So just add component Skybox, and we get a custom Skybox. So if you add the Skybox component to a camera, that's how you apply it to the camera. That was the one thing that tripped me up when I was learning about skyboxes with Unity, is it's not an actual option under camera. You have to actually add the skybox component. So let's go ahead and drag and drop the skybox material onto it. And what happens now is if we go to the game, look at that. We have our skybox.
Nice.
Let's go ahead and move our camera around and see. Well, it's not really. Let's rotate our camera. So now as we rotate our camera, we can see that our skybox does indeed look pretty good.
Yeah, it's rendering nicely.
All right, let's clear out our rotation again. And let's clear out our position. The position is going to be overridden anyway by our player script once we get to that. So yeah, that's pretty much all there is to it. You got to create first you got to create your textures. You can generate them using a variety of tools, one of which I showed. You can create them manually if you want to.
And I have made quite a few manually, and I just found out about this program. I got to tell you, go play with that. It's neat.
Yeah, definitely. So props to the dude who made it. Next up, you got to create your material, which you can now see. Here's something interesting. By using the render FX skybox, we can actually change our tint color, which allows us for some interesting effects. Neutral gray won't actually do anything. So what it's actually telling us, if we did get back into a completely neutral gray value, it'll actually tell us, it'll warn us and say, we should probably use the mobile skybox instead. So the difference between the render effects and the mobile skybox is that the mobile skybox doesn't support that tint color. I'm going to leave it on the mobile skybox, but I just want to point out that if you do want to have a tint color, you can use a slightly more expensive shader. That's typically a very common trade-off you'll see with game development.
But if not, we always try to economize where we can.
Yep. Okay, so now that we have that all set up, I think we can go ahead and move on to our player.
Sounds like fun.